hoping that this book reveals some of not only what is some of the lows in relation to Caribbean drugs, but some of the highs.
There are many things we can take away. I'm not limiting myself, but I like the way you juxtapose love and loss,
Hmm.
and how you sort of foreshadow, um, is that the right word? Foreshadow what's coming. It
Hmm.
builds the suspense, it's one. It makes for good reading. Right?
Thank you.
And two, there were a lot of conflicts. You kept us on our toes, sort of. Conflicts,
Hmm.
religious conflicts,
Yep.
um, Catholic versus the Jews, and then you
Yep.
pop a lot of proverbs and wise saying taken from Hebrews, Ethiopia.
Hmm.
Um, you drop in a lot of call names.
Yep.
Uh, the question now is, why did you make Grenada this melting pot for Trinidadians, St. Lucians, Jamaican, British Guyanese, and a whole lot of other people, Jews and
Hmm.
Hebrews, and well,
Hmm.
why did you make
Hmm.
Grenada that melting pot? Which you throwing cricket, music, religion.
Hmm. Well, Petamba, I think the reality of whether it's Grenada or Guyana or Jamaica or the British Virgin Islands or Caribbean societies are complex societies. And I wanted to have a subtext of the complexity of the Caribbean we've reflected in the novel. Complexity in geography, and part of the experience with Grenada as a locale, but connected to other parts of the region and the world, revealing that complexity, is some of my own family experience. I mean, my maternal grandparents came from St. Lucia and Barbados. Their connectivity was to other parts of the Caribbean. And so, in one respect, whether it was Grenada as a central geographic space or other places, I'm hoping that I was able to manifest the complexity of the region, irrespective of what part of the region you're in. We're all connected. Some of the connection, as you pointed out, was Trinidadian. Some of the connection is to Venezuela. Some of the connection is to Guyana. Sylvie's father was from Berbice. Sylvie had an affair with a Rasta man who was from Jamaica. Sylvie fell in love with a scoundrel who was Jamaican operating out of Detroit. So Grenada is chosen for the complexity, but Grenada is chosen also because it's a place where I had this warping experience in 1994 that was the genesis of the backstory. The place that enabled me to say, I've got to tell a tale about a broader challenge that victimizes individuals, Sylvie being one, but also victimizes societies. But I'm hoping that complexity in geography is not the only complexity. You refer to some of it. Part of our region is the complexity of religions. We've got Hinduism, we've got Christianity, we've got Judaism, we've got Rastafarianism in the region, we've got a lot of agnostics in the region. So there's a complexity of religion. I also wanted to highlight some of the complexity of our flora and fauna. I mean, all of us who grew up in Guyana or in any part of the Caribbean know of the natural herbs. And I wanted to be able to tap in to part of the richness of our place called the Caribbean is a place where we've got natural medicine, sometimes which we undervalue and underestimate. I'll tell you a personal story in regard to that. My maternal grandmother is from St. Lucia. My wife happens also to be St. Lucia. And we've gone to St. Lucia a couple of times over the 40 years my wife and I have been together. And we were visiting St. Lucia, it was 2013. We're going from Castries to the village of Soufrière, which is the same village my wife was born in, even though she grew up in London. She was born in Soufrière. And my mother, my maternal grandmother, was also from Soufrière. We were in a minivan, Petamber, and we're going up along the mountains in a winding road, as you probably know in many parts of the Eastern Caribbean. And in the van was a pregnant woman. So guess what happened? She begins to get nauseous. She begins to get sick. She got to get out. She got to get out. So the driver pulled over. He asked her to come out of the van. He leaned her up against the van, and he went to one cluster of bush. He smelled it and he dropped it. It was like the sixth or seventh cluster of bush. He came back. But this guy squeezed this bush up in his hand, passed it against this woman's nostrils. And all of us are sitting in this bus, watching at this woman revive just from this bush passed by her nose. She get back into the van, and we continue up the mountains. The power of the natural medicine. And so I wanted to sprinkle in some of that complexity, the rich complexity of language, of natural herbs, of complexity of values. One of the editors said to me, Dr. Griffith, my God, some of these women are fighting so much. Why don't you tone down this fighting? I said, no, that's life. Women sometimes have more fights over men than you would believe. It's a natural reality. So you have in the story, Sylvie's husband was having an affair with her son's, her son and daughter's godfather. So the complexity of there is geography, of geography is there. Complexity of religion is there. Complexity of landscape, of flora and fauna. Complexity of values is also there. So complexity is one of the things I'm hoping the novel would have revealed to readers.
Hmm. Ah, you're credited with coining the word or the phrase geonarcotics.
Hmm.
Why I raise this is because not many Guyanese have attempted the interregional novel. Um, there are a few of them. Our own Edgar Mittelholzer.
Okay. Hmm.
Then there was recently a Brown Curtain set in St. Lucia by Clive Sankar Dayal and
Hmm.
Beryl Gilroy from Quarantine, who did a historical novel. But not many Guyanese have attempted an interregional novel. So you're quite a innovator, quite a creator. Um, do you know that this novel, Sylvie's Love and Loss, is sort of a interregional novel?
Well, thank you for that compliment. And I don't know, I didn't know that I was in a company of a unique set of writers who have made the interregional reality manifest in their novels. But the geonarcotics element, the very geonarcotics concept that I coined is connected to the origin story, the backstory. The book I was researching that took me to Grenada, among other places, was a study I was doing to do an empirical implementation of the geonarcotics concept I had coined and published in a Canadian journal in 1993, 94. I'd gotten this big grant from the prestigious MacArthur Foundation to do an empirical study to apply this geonarcotics concept. And the book, Drugs and Security in the Caribbean, came out in 1997, was the high point of that grant output. So I'm delighted to have set the tone for a complex way of understanding the link within the region and beyond the region, connected to geography, drugs, power, and politics, and to have used that geonarcotics concept as a basis for broadening the regional connectivity in a novel. And when my second novel comes out, and I'll hopefully it'll be out by this time 2026,
Yeah.
I think you'll be pleased to see more regional connectivity.
Great. Great.
The novel that I'll be working on in earnest from next January will be centered on Guyana,
Beautiful.
but it will weave a complexity of geography that goes not only to the island Caribbean and Guyana, but will go to the Amazon part of South America. So I'm going to stick with the theme of geographic complexity and regional connectivity, and I'm going to extend it to South America with a little more earnest. There is Venezuela and part of the Caribbean Venezuela in Sylvie's Love and Loss. You're going to see more Amazon connectivity to the island Caribbean in the next
Right.
novel.
Great. Well, I wish you well with that venture, and it's already on
Hmm.
the way. But let's go back to the two documents, the study and the novel. Uh,
Hmm.
do you think, well, do you think you have achieved what you set out to do? You said you hope that the novel helps to, and I'm quoting, to mitigate the deleterious effects of the scourge of drugs. End of quote.
Hmm. Well, I don't know that the novel will mitigate the deleterious scourge of drugs. I'm hoping that the novel will enable the ambit of recognition of the need to do something more about the scourge. And I also acknowledge and understand fully, Petamber, the limitations of Caribbean countries by themselves to do that, even if only the intentions are good. Because the drugs issue, even though it's a region issue, it's a global issue. I published a book early this year, a book called Challenge Sovereignty. It's a book that I began actually in 2011. It came out of the Eric Williams Memorial Lecture I delivered at Florida International. And in that book, I show how not only the drugs issue, but I connect drugs and crime, cyber threats, and terrorism. They're not just regional issues, they're global connectivities involved in all of them. And so for Caribbean countries to deal with the scourge of crime, the scourge of drugs, the necessity for the connection beyond the Caribbean to be there, the necessity for United States involvement, European Union involvement, South American involvement, Canadian involvement. Part of the connectivity to drugs is connected to armed trafficking. In the Challenge Sovereignty book, which I published University of Illinois Press, I have one of the episodes showing how Guyana was used. Shipping company, people decided to load some arms on the ship. The arms were intended for the Dominican Republic, but as is the case with many of the drug movements, you don't move directly from South America to the Dominican Republic. You go all the way to Africa. You go to Europe, and so the drugs, the arms were unearthed in Senegal, but it involved a Guyanese flag vessel. It involved the Dominican Republic. And so the scourge of drugs, as is the issue of crime, as is the issue of arms trafficking, cannot be dealt with only by Caribbean countries. And I think that the challenge of many Caribbean leaders, of all Caribbean leaders, is being caught between a rock and a hard place. You know the challenges, but you don't have enough resources by yourselves. And even if you had all the resources, there's a transnational character to the drugs, which means that more than one country, more than one region has got to be involved in the scourge.
Professor,
managing of that scourge.
let's leave some for the other book. Let's leave some for
We
the other
certainly
book.
shall.
Let's let this book digest, and as we await the subsequent books, perhaps coming out of Sylvie's Love and Loss. And it hope it is a gain for us all who will come in contact with the book. It will be an inspiration for us all. The things that you've set out to do, how you've done it, the way you gotten published, and the many parts of the book as I started. There are so many parts, and they
Mhm.
all add up to it. Thank you. It's a very,
Thank you.
very good pleasure talking with you. It's an inspiration, it's encouragement that we can transform our experiences into a more readable, a readable form. Thank you so very much for
Thank you,
being with
Petamber.
us.